Let's start. Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. 3 months of mostly peaceful anti-government protests in Ukraine exploded into deadly violence this week. According to protesters, at least 100 were killed and 500 more wounded on Thursday in and around Kiev's Independence Square. 2 short-lived truces broke down quickly. Protesters tossed firebombs and advanced upon police lines. Government snipers shot back. Ukrainian television showed shocking scenes of protesters being mowed down by gunfire, lying on the pavement as comrades rushed to their aid. Government officials say 67 police have been captured. World and church leaders are calling for calm as well as restraint from the Kiev government. Orthodox priests have put themselves in harm's way, literally standing between police and the protesters. Orthodox leaders have sided with the protesters in their opposition to the government, which they see as being too closely aligned with Moscow, a threat to democracy and freedom. More on this later in the show. And the violence continues in Nigeria as Boko Haram has struck again. Chanting Allah is great, jihadists gunned down dozens, slit the throats of others, and burned still more alive in the latest attacks in a northeastern village. The victims, more than 50 in all, were themselves Muslim. The attack came 3 days after another 47 people were killed at a school. There are a number of Christian villages in the primarily Muslim northeastern Nigeria. Boko Haram has for years targeted both Christians and Muslims in their push to create a breakaway Islamic State. A government offensive initiated last May has largely failed to stem the insurgency. And it's been a busy week at the Vatican for Pope Francis and the Church's cardinals as they gather in a consistory and to begin this formal induction of 19 new cardinals on Saturday. On Thursday, in anticipation of the Synod for the Family in October, the Holy Father told the 180 cardinals to direct their attention to the beauty of the family and marriage and how indispensable the family is for the life of the world and for the future of humanity. Earlier in the week, the Pope and his group of 8 cardinal advisors met and discussed reform within the troubled Institute for Works of Religion, better known as the Vatican Bank. The 8 offered a 3-page report and recommendations. However, those recommendations are for the Pope's eyes only, and they'll remain confidential, according to Vatican spokesman Father Federico Lombardi. More on the latest from Rome in our next segment. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister David Cameron and a soon-to-be cardinal are clashing over welfare reform. Before leaving for Rome to receive his red hat, Westminster's Cardinal Delegate Vincent Nichols said welfare cuts have torn apart the safety net for the poor. He said it was, quote, a real dramatic crisis, and for the country of our affluence, that quite frankly is a disgrace, end quote. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, Cameron said he deeply disagreed with the Cardinal Archbishop's assessment. He said the reforms aim to end a growing dependency culture so that people are able to stand on their own 2 feet and build a better life for themselves and their family. And back in the U.S., another defeat for traditional marriage. Oregon's Democrat Attorney General, Ellen Rosenblum, said Thursday that she will not defend the state's marriage law. She says the law cannot withstand a federal constitutional challenge. It's been a rough couple of weeks for marriage. A federal judge last week ruled that Kentucky must recognize same-sex marriages performed in other states. Legal challenges to traditional marriage were also launched in Texas, Louisiana, and Missouri. Attorneys general in Virginia, Pennsylvania, California, Nevada, and Illinois have also refused to defend their states' respective marriage laws. Another multi-million-dollar clerical abuse settlement in Los Angeles. Last week, the Archdiocese paid $13 million to 17 alleged victims. 11 of the victims were allegedly abused by the same now laicized priest, Nicolas Aguilar Rivera. In 1988, Aguilar Rivera fled to his native Mexico after being informed by archdiocesan officials of abuse charges from several altar boys. The Archdiocese did not tell police of the allegations for another 2 days. Aguilera Rivera remains at large, and according to a deposition unsealed on Wednesday, Cardinal Roger Mahony, the then Archbishop of LA, directed the vicar of clergy not to give police a list of altar boys who worked with the priest. Cardinal Mahony said he did it out of concern for the altar boys, saying it could be, quote, very traumatic to those servers to all of a sudden be sitting in front of a policeman being interrogated. The cardinal is unlikely to face obstruction of justice charges due to the statute of limitations. The nation's largest archdiocese has now paid $720 million to abuse victims over the past decade. And despite being retired, the Archbishop of Los Angeles, the former Archbishop, Cardinal Mahony, is quite active. Before leaving for the consistory in Rome, Mahony blogged his disapproval of House Republicans for their inaction on immigration reform. Specifically, he called for a House vote on the comprehensive package passed by the Senate last year. He accused the GOP of dilatory tactics, labeling them as tragic. The Bishop of Buffalo, New York, has publicly rebuked a politician for changing his position on abortion. State Senator Timothy Kennedy told the media this past weekend that his abortion stance had evolved from pro-life to pro-choice. He insists that he remains a practicing Catholic. This drew the ire of Bishop Richard Malone. In a statement, the bishop said, "For anyone to say that he or she is a faithful Catholic and to be pro-abortion, pro-choice rights is totally inconsistent with Catholic teaching, which is clearly articulated in the Catechism of the Catholic Church." The bishop continued, "Practicing Catholics who claim they're nurturing their children in the faith must teach their children that abortion is intrinsically evil, that human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception." End quote. And if cranking out best-selling CDs weren't enough to keep them busy, the Dominican Sisters of Mary, Mother of the Eucharist, have a new mission: staffing the Pontifical North American College Library in Rome. And because of their new duties, Sister Maximilian Marie and Sister Mary Cecilia of the Order presented Pope Francis with their 2013 hit CD, Mater Eucharistia, earlier this week. The album was recorded during the conclave that elected Pope Francis, and in the middle of recording the Te Deum track, the famous white smoke appeared. As you can see from the video of that priceless moment, so I guess it's fitting that the Dominican sisters personally delivered the recording to the Pope. Don't you love how they even got him to tilt the CD up for the camera? He'll be doing lead vocals on the next CD if they keep this up.